To fit the front door, I want a wipe of synthetic grease in that slot there at the top and at the bottom. Give a light wipe to those inner surfaces of the arms. Slide this into place. Swing it into place in the camera body, and we have 2 washers and their screws. We had the thicker of the 2 washers was present at the top of the door. I've got to get that in there, and that just fell out for good measure. Need to get that in on top there, slide that in under the door, line up the screw hole through the washer, put the hinge pin screw in place and tighten that up. At the bottom, exactly the same deal, except in this case we had a thin washer in that position. Slide that into that position, line up the screw hole, put this hinge pin screw in position, I'm just rocking that backwards and forwards because it's not finding the hole in the casting very well there. Yeah, that's it, it's just got fallen in. Right, that's the door. Check that it opens and closes smoothly. All appears to be good. So, what can we say about this? Well, the mechanics of the camera body are pretty much done there. I need to service the rangefinder and put that in place, and clean the top cover, clean the meter, and put all those pieces in place. And then finally turn my attention to the shutter and lens. So I'm putting this to one side, rangefinder next. Okay, I'm just going to mark around the end of the arm there so I can put this back in exactly the same position. That's because there's a sliding bush in here. And if it doesn't go back in the right position, you've got to do a lot of adjustments. To loosen this screw, and just undo that screw. Use my tweezers now. Remove the screw. There's a wavy washer under there. That's not looking very clean. Pull this arm out, remove the little pin. There's the arm off the rangefinder. Now I'm going to mark this brass bush so I get it back in the same alignment as it came from, like that. There's a bush in here that ran in that slot. That's what that arm connected to. Okay, so that part's off. The prism at the end needs to come off. 2 small screws. They hold it in position. They also serve to make your vertical alignment adjustments. Here's the prism. Don't muck with this assembly. Don't loosen that screw. Do not remove the prism from that little bracket. Otherwise you will not like the result. The eyepiece glass at the back here, it's pretty grimy in this case. Let's remove that screw from there. Take the mask off. And there's the glass, that's pretty greasy. Now that lens, I can see that quite clearly here now. That's quite greasy at the back. And that's all on the outside surface. So 75% of the problem with this rangefinder was that piece of glass, and it's the rear surface. It's just got an oily haze on it. The front glass here, I'm going to take that apart and clean it. But as I say, most of the problem was in that rear glass. If I cleaned that, that would be the vast bulk of the problem gone. Remove that screw, take that bracket off. We've got multiple pieces here. You can slide out this retainer spring from the central element. Here we've got a glass. If you find a glass component with silvered lines on it, that's the larger of the two silvered frames. The other one's in the front here. Now there's more pieces to this, and this will be locked in with lacquer. I'm going to need some acetone to get that loose. Let's remove its retaining spring first, which interestingly was in back to front. Right, let me find some lacquer, acetone. Right, I'll put a drop of acetone at the top here and at the bottom, and that's just locked in with a bit of clear lacquer. It's to stop the glass here from being able to move at all. If it can move, it will shift your apparent rangefinder image, so you'll never get your alignment correct. Or you'll get your alignment correct, but next time you look it'll be wrong after it's managed to shuffle itself left or right. Okay, so hopefully that'll soften that lacquer. Now there's a mask in the middle here, a little metal mask, and I find that if I catch at that with my fingernail, if the acetone has softened the lacquer enough, it'll move. And then I can get the glass loose. Do not force anything here. That piece of glass in there with the mirror, with the frame lines on it, is exceptionally delicate. If you force it, it'll snap, and if it snaps, well, obviously you're going to have to find another one. Yeah, it's just come loose. Just felt that pop loose. Right, so that glass, I can probably push that through now with the tip of a toothpick. Slide it out of the frame. That's very delicate. Now the other piece, the metal mask, that's not particularly delicate, and we can slide that out. Here we've got a front component which is reasonably robust, and this mask, which is a celluloid, I think, it doesn't dissolve with acetone. This is glass. I've got to clean all these surfaces, because now, even if they were clean to start off with, now the acetone has got all that lacquer all over them, so I've got to clean all those surfaces. The only thing we've got left in here is the semi-silvered mirror. The front surface here, that's plain glass. You can clean that with glass cleaner and a cotton bud. The rear surface is silvered. If you start wiping at that with a cotton bud and glass cleaner, you will clean the silver off there, and it won't work after that. So leave that alone. I'm going to clean that in an ultrasonic cleaner, so it will not be a problem for me. But to prepare this for cleaning, I need to wipe away all this grease here. Where the arm was, this is greasy. And if I don't remove that grease, I'm not going to have a very good chance of getting that glass clean and grease free in the ultrasonic cleaner. This I'll clean in a glass with hot water and a drop of ordinary domestic dish soap, and that'll be suspended in my ultrasonic cleaner. I'll give it 3 minutes. If you overdo it, you will blast away all your silver. 3 minutes works fine for me. Then I rinse it under a hot tap, blow away all the moisture, and dry it with a hairdryer. And while you're drying it, you need to be blowing away any moisture drops that you see at the time. Otherwise, if you just dry them in place, you will end up with coffee rings. and you'll have to do the whole process again. Right, that for the ultrasonic cleaner, and while that's happening I'll have to clean up these glass components here. In fact, I might clean the two pieces of glass with the masks with the silvered lines on now, then clean them in the ultrasonic cleaner as well, so I'll give them a double clean. Clean this glass initially with some naphtha, acetone. That's to remove that lacquer, any lacquer that may have found its way onto the surface while I was getting it loose. That looks good. The silvered lines on here are reasonably robust. You often find cameras where they've disappeared. I can only assume that some atmospheric contamination is dealt to them in those cases. Generally speaking, when you're cleaning them like this, they stand up very well. This celluloid mask, I'm just wiping that because that's got the lacquer on it. And that looks fine. This painted metal mask, you'll be a bit cautious about that because you will wipe the paint right off that with acetone if you're a bit enthusiastic. I just want to make sure I've got the worst of that lacquer off there. That looks good. That only leaves this piece. The lacquer is mostly on the top and bottom edges, but they're not the bits you see through. You see through the front and rear face, so I'll make sure that they're nice and clean. And of course the lacquer will just leave, if it leaves any marks on there at all, they'll be hard. They won't want to just rub off with a bit of glass cleaner. Okay, that looks nice and clean. So that's those parts done with the acetone. That's all that was required. The two pieces of glass with their frame lines, I'll put them into the finder here. I'll make sure I've got my silvered lines in the right place. The glass at the front, that's the smaller of the two rectangles. The silvered lines go to the inside, they go to the rear. The glass that goes in the middle, the silvered lines point to the front. The silvered lines are on one surface of the glass, they're not on both surfaces of the glass, and it does make a difference. They will not focus correctly if you've got them back to front. In fact, you might not see your silver lines at all. Right, so I'll just put that little retainer on there. That'll hold those pieces of glass in there while I clean this in the ultrasonic cleaner. Right, I'm back with the rangefinder from the cleaner, and probably the first thing you notice is how sparkly that glass is. It's amazing what difference cleaning a very fine oily haze has when you compared to properly cleaned glass. Okay, I can start reassembling that. Let's get this up on a block of wood where we can see things. That's better. Okay, so I'll just remove that screw, take that little tab off there. Our metal mask here went behind the centre component, and I'll put its retaining spring in place. The front component. Right, so let's just drag this nice clean piece of paper back into the picture. The concave side of this, the mask goes over that. It's got little bent arms on the end of it, so it sort of clips into place. I'm checking that that looks nice and clean, and acceptably clean. And slide that into place at the front here. has celluloid mask, has little nicks in it, little spots in the corners. It has 2 on the top, 1 on the bottom corners. To get that the right way round, put its retaining spring in place and put that clip back on, that right angle clip. And that's the front glass all dealt to. I'm just going to blow that bit of dust off there. That looks good. So the glass at the back, this was this particularly greasy eyepiece lens. Now I want to clean that with some glass cleaner. I'll just clean this with some glass cleaner. Now the inside surface wasn't anywhere near as bad as the outside surface. The inside surface is convex, the outside surface is pretty much flat. And that was the greasy one. Right, I'll put that in place. And get rid of those last little bits of dust off there. Bit of dust on the other surface, I'll just flip that over. And flip it back. Okay, so I'll put that retainer in place. And just have a look out the window and see how clean it is. That looks absolutely fine. So I'm going to clean the prism now and put that in place. Now there are 3 surfaces on the prism we can get to. So I'll clean each of those in turn. The 2 outside ones are easy. The internal surface we can get to down in the tube. That's more of a nuisance, but we can do that with a cotton bud. You don't want it too wet, otherwise it creates a nuisance. And you've got to be careful to make sure there's no particles of cotton or anything inside. And that can go back into the rangefinder body. Just run those 2 screws in lightly. Check the prism's pushed all the way in, and the screws up lightly. Check that the prism is more or less square with the body. Pop that to one side. I need to deal with this. Now here we've got a couple of things to deal with. We've got to clean the glass lens, which is probably grimy. It is. It's almost as bad as that rear glass was. And this surface here is greasy with sticky old grease, and that's certainly got to be clean. So I'll get rid of that grease first with a bit of acid, bit of naphtha. You can see the colour of that, probably it's quite yellow, that's oil. So I want all of that off that surface, off the bottom and off the inside of that hole where the bush is going to go. So that part's clean. I've got to clean the glass next. Much the same as dealing with the prism. One surface is easy to get at, this one, it's very hazy looking. The inside surface is inside that tube, so I can swirl the cotton bud around in there with the glass cleaner and the dry end, and look at my glass and see what it's like. That appears good. Pop that to one side. These bits now, I'll clean that brass bush. And we've got a mark on here, an alignment mark that I made. I can see that, that's good. I'll clean the screw. And this wavy washer, I'm looking at that, I'm trying to, it's got some brown on it and I'm trying to tell whether that's rust. If it's rust, whether it's just surface rust or whether it's going to cause me any problems. It's not on any of the high spots, so it's not on any of the areas that will be in hard contact with the places, so I'm just giving that a scraping that off. Oh, that looks fine. It's important that that is fairly clean because it's important that the rangefinder is able to move freely. Now that looks good. Okay, so this arm. I'll take some molybdenum paste. Once through the centre where the bush is going to run, and a light wipe on that top surface, not as much as that we need either. There's the bush, put that in there, line up that mark I'd made on it. That's ready to go on the body. So assembling this. But as I said, this is the bush that it screws into, which runs on a slot inside the body here. So to get this in place, grab it with my curved nose tweezers, slide it into place, and then cheat because I've got a jig. This jig's got a post on it which drops down through a hole in the finder and supports that little bush from inside, so the bush is suspended there, won't fall away. I can put the arm in place. Wipe around here where this is molybdenum paste, and this is just where that wavy wash is going to sit. the screw in place. Find the right tweezers. And let's screw up, pop that wavy washer back into position. Check that the arm is aligned with the scribe mark that I put there to start off with. It appears about right. Just tighten that up. Use this tool to give it a bit extra tightness. And I've got to get this pin through the spring and hooked into position. Sometimes I can do this without launching the pin across the room. See if I can today. Get the pin through the spring, stretch the spring out, drop the pin into place. That arm seems to be moving freely, and I'm going to look out the window and see what I've got. Well, the horizontal alignment's good, but the vertical alignment is miles off. My moving image is much too high. So we'll slacken that front screw and wind the rear screw slightly. That's pretty good now. It's still high, but it's not a ridiculously high. These adjustments are very subtle. Do not be surprised if you end up spending a lot of time going backwards and forwards, going past where you want to be each time. That's normal. I only want to get this very approximately right, because when you put the thing on the camera body, this pin being lifted by the screw on the camera body will shift your vertical alignment slightly. That's pretty good. It's coming back past the infinity position. Before I make an adjustment to that, I'm going to move this lens assembly one way or the other and see if that makes a difference. That's very close now. Because if I can put everything back where it came from, that'd be good. Yeah, it's going back past the infinity position, so if I tighten up this screw here slightly, that adjustment, this screw, I should be right. Yeah, okay. So that's good at the moment. It's great horizontal. The vertical alignment's pretty close. That rangefinder is ready to go back on the camera body.